Hey Matt, how's it going?
Good, Ryan. How about you?
Doing well, doing well. Something I gotta tell you though. Last time you were at my house, you left your typewriter here, and it's from, I think it's straight from the Tortured Poets Department.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. I was writing something about how I'm having someone's baby, but I'm actually not. It's weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is a little weird. You know what else is kind of a little bit weird? The question I gotta ask you:
What's that?
Who uses typewriters anyway, man?
It's a good question. It's a really good question.
Yeah, and we have this thing called a computer, and we have this thing called a phone, and you know what you can do with both of those things?
What's that?
You could listen to this.
What?
Welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side of the Mississippi, hosted by two dashingly good men who share the same middle name. I am the one, the only, the undisputed Ryan James Kearns.
And I am the often disputed Matthew James Durzik.
And this show is called Hey, Listen to This. Essentially what me and Matt do here, if this is your first time, listening into our podcast here, each week me and Matt, we take turns dissecting an album track by track. And for the last couple weeks, we've been on a little bit of a kick where we change up the styles like drastically. Like we went from 80s hip hop to what was the one that we did right after that? It was Jimmy Eat World, and then we went to 80s heavy metal with Inge Malmstrom. Again, if I'm mispronouncing that name, I'm so sorry. And then we went to 1959 to discuss Charles Mingus's Mingus Ahum, and that was our last episode. So, Matt, I got a question for you. What do you got cooked up for us this week?
So, as we said at the end of last week's episode, we are going from our oldest album ever reviewed from 1959 to our newest album ever reviewed, released at the time that this episode will be uploaded last month, because it'll be May 2024, and this album was released in April of 2024. And its mere existence was announced in February of 2024. That is the Totured Poets Department by one Taylor Swift. Now, in case you don't know who Taylor Swift is, one question, how was your time in the cryogenic freezer? Because Taylor Swift is undoubtedly, unquestionably, the world's biggest pop star right now. Not even remotely a question. And this release comes on the heels of last year's release of Midnights. Or excuse me, I think it's 2022's release of Midnights. And this is her first full-length LP since then. And we're going to get into this. And before we get started, I think it's important that we lay out our experience in dealing with Taylor Swift before this, so that everyone who's coming in wondering what we're going to say knows where we're coming from. I'll go first. As far as me listening to Taylor Swift, I, like any casual, started listening to, a couple of her hits from the late 2000s and early 10s. I really have only listened to a couple of full-length Taylor Swift albums, which were 2012's Red and 2014's 1989. I'm also going to throw Reputation in there, but I wasn't actually listening to it. It was on at some party I was at, so that's not really something that counts. So I haven't really listened to a full Taylor Swift album in the better part of a decade. I've listened to a handful of songs between then. I did really dig Anti-Hero, but I am coming into this as a casual and not a Swiftie. So that is my push.
So this is interesting because like I feel like between the two of us, like I've listened to more Taylor Swift stuff, and like in terms of like whole albums, and like the albums that I've listened to in the past from her, like they've actually given me hope that like she can create like a really good album. Like so to rewind my journey as being a Taylor Swift listener, not a fan, but a listener. Let me make a distinction there. I was first introduced to her thanks to songs like Love Story, You Belong to Me, like where she was really starting to transition from the countryside to the country pop side. And I mean, she was basically inescapable from that point on. My first full-length listen, and I actually reviewed this album on the Tumblr page that I had years ago, was the album Red. And I remember walking away from that album being kind of impressed. I was just like, yeah, you have the songs like, 22 and like, like a couple of her poppy stuff. But like when she gets a little bit sincere and when you get into the deeper cuts, like I was really impressed with what was going on there. And then from there, I didn't listen to Reputation. And because I think the next two albums that I listened to from her were the Folklore and Evermore albums. I think it's Folklore, right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that actually did come after Reputation. I did also listen to 1989. Again, I walked away from that feeling the same way that I had with Red, and but I really did dig Folklore and Evermore as a complete whole package because it seemed like Taylor was really focusing in on her craft. And if I'm not mistaken, this was around the time that she and Aaron Dessner from the National fame collaborated, and I could see that partnership really helping out. So, and then from there, I really haven't been paying attention. Well, I mean, like, she's only released one album, like, officially since then, which was Midnight's. I mean, you always have the Taylor's versions of stuff, but, like, I don't know. Like, when I listen to Folklore and Evermore, like, I listened to them maybe once or twice. I was just like, oh, hey, this is good Taylor Swift music, in my opinion. But I never went back to it. So when you said that we were going to do this album for our next episode, I actually kind of got a little bit excited, to be honest with you, because I was just like, oh, like, I'm kind of curious to see what, like, Taylor Swift sounds nowadays. Like, with everything when she's on top of the world and she's, like, this mega pop star and, like, it seems like she could do no wrong. Like, how does this album stack up compared to the other previous experiences that I've had from her?
Yeah, so now that you, the listener, have gotten a full list of the deck of cards that me and Ryan have brought to the table, that is your warning. So if our swiftiness is not swifty enough for you, this is the part where you may decide, okay, these who have no idea what the hell they're talking about. But for those of you who are remaining, thank you for joining us on this journey as we enter the realms of the Totured Poets Department. And you want to just get right into it, Ryan?
Yeah. So before we go into Fortnite here, let me just set the scene here very clearly before we even speak one word about this album. Yes, both me and Matt are not the target demographic with this album. Let's face it. However, both me and Matt can enjoy a good pop album, and we are not averse to the genre. We just, like we even said, like, we've listened to previous stuff. I've admitted, like, liked whole Taylor Swift albums before. So just keep that in mind that we're not the target demographic, but we do enjoy this genre specifically. So that being said, Fortnite featuring Post Malone. So, I like this track. It's a great way for the album to kick off. I like the production elements here. That thudding bass and the spacey atmosphere plays off well to start off the track. You get some good lines here that I really, really do appreciate. Like, lines like, I was a functioning alcoholic till nobody noticed my new aesthetic. And here you kind of see where Taylor's playing with an often criticized trope that she usually leans on with, like, being heartbroken and sad. But in this specific song here, it seemed like, this was a short relationship that her and this other partner had, and for some strange reason, they're still, like, in touch. And, like, you have that dynamic of, like, they see the other significant others, like, when I mean significant others, I'm talking about, like, marriage partners, and it's an interesting dynamic. I like the song. There's a lot of good lines here. I think the addition of Post Malone works well. I really like him as a pop artist. I think he does create some really great tracks. What are your thoughts about this song here?
Pretty similar to yours, honestly. I do agree that this is a solid way to start the album and a good choice of first single for the album. The only lyrics in the song I really wasn't a fan of were she's talking about Mondays and Februaries. I thought that was a little iffy, but that's a small nitpick. Otherwise, again, I agree. Post Malone's input is very solid, and while it's not necessarily, amazing, it does its job very well. And you're right, it is a song about an affair that has turned into this painful longing. And I do find it interesting that in the chorus, or would-be chorus, or in some part of the song, she's talking about, how the new partner of this former lover, she wants to kill her, and then later decides she wants to kill him. And now, obviously, this is not anything new in music. There have obviously been songs about murder and jealous fantasy over the course of time. But it is still jarring to me that such a song is probably going to be number one in the country, because this is the lead single from the latest Taylor Swift album. So, of course, it is going to hit number one, unless by some miracle any of these other songs on the album supersede it and plays on Spotify.
Another interesting moment here, because I do like that line where she's saying, like, hey, your wife waters flowers, which is such a mundane task, and Taylor wants to kill her because she wants to be that wife there. But a moment in this track here that I really do appreciate from a songwriting standpoint is that when Post Malone really comes in, it works really well, considering that he adds harmony to the lines that Taylor is saying, and he echoes the lines. It's almost like, you can really see the other side of the fence, where that other person who was involved in this relationship is feeling. So, I feel like this song works really, really well. And, dude, I got really excited because, even the way the song ends with a nice build and payoff, it elevates the track to a higher level of enjoyment, in my opinion. If I were to go back to, any tracks off this album, I am definitely going back to this one here.
Yeah, and two more notes from me on this song. You talk about how the line of his wife waters flowers, I want to kill her. That, to me, it also may not just represent her wanting to kill the wife to be with him, but also wanting to kill that mundanity to reclaim that youthful spirit that this affair initially brought. So I think that is also a possibility, too. So that makes it a clever line. And also, and I know we're talking about the music here, so I'll just go over this briefly, but the music video, basically all you need to know about the music video, if you haven't seen it yet, is Taylor Swift has watched the movie Poor Things. That's it. That's all that this video is.
Yeah, what a great movie, man. What a great movie.
Yeah. Weird movie.
All right, so I'll let you tackle the next track here, or at least kicking it off.
Yeah. So the next track on the Tortured Poets Department is the title track called The Tortured Poets Department. And I think this is a solid track, too. I don't think it's as good as Fortnite, but I really do like the backing production from Jack Antonoff here. Seems very similar to something that... the song that came to mind for me was My Girls by Animal Collective. Just a very light but driving synth pop song. The lyrics are quite good and descriptive in regards to, these two tortured beings being, thinking they're higher than they actually are, but Taylor realizing, no, we're really not. We're just a couple of idiots who are, pretending to be poetic. We're thespians, but we're basically just high school kids with, some writing skills. Again, I don't think this is a standout track. I do think it lingers and prolongs a little bit. And my one real nitpick of the song, and again, and I say this not as a prude, because I do not mind profanity in art or use of vulgar language in art, but the F-bombs in the song really don't work at all. They just seem so pigeonholed and forced. In the not in the choruses, but the post-choruses. But aside from that, I think this is just a solid track.
So, yeah, your thoughts on the F-bombs that were dropped specifically in this track here were my exact thoughts, too. I'm like, this just seems a little weird, and, it didn't need to be included. There's tracks later on in this album here that we're going to talk about that when Taylor swears, it seems like it works out well, but not specifically here. Overall, this track here, man, I'm going to be honest with you, it's a mixed bag for me. There's moments where, I really like what's going on. The repetition of who's gonna hold you like me. I really like that because it really shows the mindset that Taylor was going for in this track here. Saying, hey, who's gonna love you like me? No one's gonna care for you because I know what your mindset was, and no one's gonna really love that as much as I did. I like in the chorus where they're naming Patti Smith and I think the other poet was Dylan Thomas. I felt like that was really good. The line about Charlie Puth being a bigger artist was a little weird for me. And another decent line one of my favorite moments in this track here is that in the bridge, she's talking about at dinner, you take my ring off my middle finger and put it on the one people put wedding rings on, and that's the closest I've come to my heart exploding. I feel like that was a really great moment. You could really get into the mindset of what was going on in that specific scene. One thing that I will kind of disagree with you on respectfully is that the production is a little bit weird for me. It's a little hit or miss. I like the synths that were dazzling over everything, but the drums that were underneath, they just seemed a little bit hollow, that I just couldn't really sink my teeth into. And there's also a moment here where it's going to come up plenty enough times in this review here, where Taylor's seemingly trying to get out as many words as possible, and it doesn't come across as organic. In the opening verse, she's talking about, but you're in self-sabotage mode, throwing spikes down on the road, but I've seen this episode and still love the show. The way that it comes off, it just seems like she's trying to fit in so many words where it could have just been trimmed down, and she could really use the she probably could have really used the assistance of one Jack Antonoff to, like, maybe say, hey, instead of saying this, like, maybe just try to, like, have the mindset less is more.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, again, I don't think this is a great track by any means. It's an interesting track, I would say at best, because it does provide all of this different imagery that she is providing. But at the same time, it does feel a little haphazard. It does feel like she's just putting words in the song to add to the song. But on the other hand, and this isn't so much me defending those options, just providing another perspective, because it is a song about tortured poets. Maybe that's kind of the point where, because, these tortured poets, they just come with like these little stanzas and they think, oh, that's good, but they never go anywhere with it. And in a sense, it is kind of being a tortured poet, is just having a little something, but not enough. And that's kind of what the song's about too, as a whole. And as far as production, I think we can respectfully disagree. I think it's kind of like the last episode we were talking about the bass solo that you didn't like on one of the tracks from Charles Mingus. You're probably right, but at the same time, it didn't bother me that much. So that's probably where I'm gonna leave that off. But again, I think the title track it's okay. It's okay. It's not mind-blowingly good. It's not mind-blowingly bad. It's just okay.
So I feel like we covered the title track really well at this point. So if it's okay with you, I want to talk about my boy and how he only breaks his favorite toys.
By all means, go for it.
So unlike the last track where like I had mixed feelings about the production on here, I like the production on this track. I feel like it's good. The drum machine works out well. Overall, this song, I really dig it, man. Like the production's killer. Taylor's delivery, at least starting out, is pretty decent. I like the chorus, the lines about I'm queen of sandcastles, he destroys, oh. And in the chorus, the synths work so well, whether it's laying down drones or doing fun lines, I'm absolutely all here for it, man. And like I kind of like just the dynamics that she was going for, like still playing off the idea of like she's in a relationship and she loves somebody who has this mental illness, and drawing comparisons to like this like how a child would break like his favorite toys. Like I'm absolutely all here for it. It's a really fun track and I really like it, man.
It's interesting you say that because this is my least favorite song on the album.
Oh my goodness! Okay, so this is going to be a fun review. Tell me more.
Okay, I will give you credit that the backing is pretty solid. I mean, it's not like, again, it's not amazing. I think it's probably more like a beefed up follow-up to the Tortured Poets Department. But I disagree with you on the delivery of Taylor's vocals. I think they're really clunky here, especially on the chorus. It just feels like the chorus should be a little stronger, and the difference in her delivery from the chorus to the verses and back again doesn't really change all that much. The lyrics themselves, I thought the Queen of Sandcastles line was, we were just talking about how it felt like a lot of the lyrics on Tortured Poets Department where they're just to be there. I think that's this whole song. I think this whole song is just full of lyrics that just seem to just, it's the lyrical equivalent of throwing spaghetti at the wall to see if it'll stick. That being said, there is one really, really good line in this song, which is, he saw forever, so he smashed it. I think that line is fantastic. I think that's a really good line in an otherwise nothing burger of a song. I don't think the pre-choruses work at all. And this is the only track in my re-listen of the album that I decided like 1 minute in, I'm like, nope, we're done. I know I don't like this. We're moving on.
Oh my goodness, man! You're breaking my favorite toys here, man. Sorry, I had to.
I know.
I can understand like your thoughts and feelings about like the lyrical delivery and just the performances. Like, there's a lot of spots in this album here where like I do have issues with how Taylor does deliver lines. I might have gotten a little bit too fixated on the concept that Taylor was going for, and I thought it worked out well in my opinion. I mean, we when we disagree on this show here, I mean, we respectfully disagree. And that kind of shows to the dynamic of what we have going on here, because we don't share notes and we don't have the same kind of brain. Even though sometimes we end up with the same scores off of albums, like it's interesting whenever that happens. But yeah, I don't know. Like the only other note that I have to say about this track here that I'll add, and then we can go on to Down Bad, is I like the outro, how it sends off the song in a good way. Like Taylor could have written the chorus until the cows came home, but the way that it changes up, it works out well in my opinion. Again, I like the track. I know that I respect your point of view on it. And maybe if I would ever revisit this track here specifically, maybe my mind could change my mind would be changed a little bit. I don't believe so, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, again, we have the right to disagree. I don't think it's going to be... I don't think it's the wildest disagreement we've had on this show, but yeah, it's as soon as you said, I really dig this track, I was like, uh-oh, we are going to enter some territory here.
Yeah, I think our wildest disagreement, if I can go off on a tangent here, was literally a whole episode about Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, that's fair. That's probably the biggest.
Where, like, you're talking about Born to Run and how, like, it's like this encapsulation of, like, life itself, and I'm like, I can't. But that being said, you want to kick off the next track here, man?
Yes, the next track 4 on the Tortured Poets Department, which, by the way, if I may, I'll also go off on a tangent. We are only doing the first part of the album. We're not doing the anthology. We're just doing the original 16 tracks. That's it. So if you're coming here to hear our thoughts on Thank You, Amy, you have come to the wrong place. So, Down Bad. This track, I actually like this track a lot. It comes off to me as more of a straightforward pop song that provide a decent amount of self-awareness into Taylor's psyche, because she's basically talking about how, her concept of love and, wanting to be with somebody is very much on a high school level. And she talks about it in a way that a lot of high schoolers would, with terms like down bad. I think the pre-choruses do work this time. I think the chorus itself is very strong. And again, I don't think it's necessarily as wordy or as introspective as some of the songs that we're gonna get to, or even some of the ones we've covered already. But just on its own, as a solid pop song, I think it actually works really well. Like, if it weren't for the F-bombs just sprinkled throughout the chorus, which in this case do work, unlike that of the Tortured Poets Department, this could easily be on the radio and be a solid, strong single. So, yeah. And it was at this point in the album, I think the album kind of started making a bit more sense as to what exactly it is.
So I'm not making this up, man, whenever I say this. This is one of my least favorite songs off the album.
Saw that one coming.
And, yeah, so I don't know if I specifically told you this or not, but when I first did do my initial listen of this album, even without knowledge that we were gonna, review it, this was one of the tracks that I skipped. And the reason why, is that when Taylor goes up in that whispery high register, I don't feel like she hits those notes. It just seems like it's, it just sounds bad, man. And I was wondering, why is she going with this, whispery kind of vocals? And it clicked on me once I actually listened to the Anthony Pantano review of this. Like, she's trying to be a Lana Del Rey in this track here, like in those moments. It does not land well in my opinion. The production itself here, I like the chill beats, but the whirly noises, they don't work. And the chorus, it's more about vibes than actually anything else. And one thing I will actually disagree with you on, is that I feel like the swearing here works out well, much better than the previous track here. So yeah, it's interesting that literally probably like everything that you just said, I'm like, no, I'm not digging it, man. I'm not down bad, man.
Well, I mean, no, actually, I do think the F-bombs on the chorus do work, so...
Oh, yeah, sorry about that, man.
That's okay. But I will comment to your thing about... Because I did watch the Fantana review, too, and it kind of... And not only that, but it kind of reminded me how... have you ever watched the South Park episode about Pokemon?
It's been a while, but yeah, I have watched it once or twice.
Okay. Well, for those who haven't, 20-year-old spoilers incoming, just to give you a warning. Basically, it's a episode about how in the South Park world, they're called Chin Pokemon. And in the episode, it's about how all the kids are, like, all of a sudden becoming, like, these hardcore Chin Pokemon fans, and how... one of the main characters, Kyle Proflowski, basically is sort of riding behind the waves the whole time. So by the time that everybody decides they're done with Pokemon, he's still like hardcore into it and almost goes to war with Japan over it for some reason. It's South Park, don't ask. And to me, Taylor Swift has always kind of felt like the Kyle Proflowski of pop music, where... like you say, Lana Del Rey. I know Fantano described some stuff from Olivia Rodrigo that Taylor sort of copying. It almost seems like a lot of the time, especially when she goes pop, that Taylor basically raises her hand saying, "Oh, I could do this too," like months after it's been done. And that's not to discredit what Taylor is doing at all, but there is that feeling of, and Reputation, in a sense, was like this a lot, where it just feels like she's doing things that were already done by, lesser known artists earlier, and granted, Elvis did this too, more blatantly and perhaps racistly, but Taylor Swift, again, she does sort of have that feeling of, oh, I can do this too. But all that to say, I like Down Bad. I understand you don't. Is there anything else we want to talk about on this song?
I'm gonna add one, stinger at the end of your your talk about influences and how Taylor lags behind that, and then I'll add one more note about this track, and then we can go on to So Long London. I am just saying with this here, with the comparison of Lana Del Rey, it's not necessarily a bad thing to emulate your influences. Heck, I mean, that's why we have music in the first place. You get influenced by something, and then you're like, hey, I think I can do that. It's just the execution of it is poor, in my opinion. And then the other note I want to do about Down Bad is that the bridge, there is a moment where... well, actually, the whole thing is just a complete mess, in my opinion. The production is not understanding the assignment. Taylor's lyrics are confused, and then there's a weird pause at the end where everyone involved is like, oh, yeah, let's just go back to the chorus, man. The lyrics that I'm emphasizing here is, I loved your hostile takeovers, encounters close and closer, all your indecent exposures. How dare you say that it's, I'll build you a fort on some planet where they can all understand it. I don't understand what she was going on with that. And it just, even the line of, how dare you say it's, and she doesn't actually finish that statement there. it frustrates me, and it instantly starts to drag down the album's momentum for me. So that being said, I will kick off So Long London, if that's okay with you.
That's perfectly fine by me.
All right. So Long London. It's another mixed bag here for me because like the intro was a little bit off-putting where like it almost seems like it's going for like a Christmassy kind of vibe, but I don't like how like the echoes are just so prominent where it's just like you literally just it's almost like she's just repeating herself. I mean, I understand the aesthetic that she was going for, but I don't feel like it lands here. But the production on this track here is much better compared to the last track. I kind of like the Spacey Sims to act more of a bass at points. And yeah, overall, like I really dig this track. Taylor's delivery is really good, and yeah, the lyrics are really good. One other note that I'm gonna just say here is that there's an interesting change up with the chorus, at least in the first one, that I noticed that the production changes up and hyper focuses on what Swift is saying at that point. Yeah, I feel like this track. It's a mixed bag, unfortunately, because you have that echoey kind of part that kind of drags down the track's momentum, but there's good moments here sprinkled in.
Yeah, I think you honestly hit the nail on the head as far as So Long London. I do agree that the intro is a little off-putting, and I also love how you called it Christmassy because we're in the timeline of human history now where any old music is considered Christmassy because, you know, it's just like, oh no, that's just like a round chorale. No, we don't hear that until Christmas. It's Christmassy. But that being said, I really do like the production on here. I think the fast sort of synth shuffle in the back does provide a very intense backdrop. I think Taylor's lyrics here are very good, describing, breaking up. When she talks about, two graves, one gun, like that's like you can image it provides the imagery of, okay, it feels like, somebody did something here that took us both down, and now whatever we had is gone forever. And I do like the fact that throughout the song it feels like it's going to build to something, but it never quite does. And I actually kind of like that on this song because it doesn't go for that explosive, like, type of moment. It just keeps becoming intense and intense and intense until the song just sort of stops at the very end. I think this is one of the better tracks on the album.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like we covered this track pretty well. Do you want to move on to But Daddy, I Love Him?
Yes, let's move on to But Daddy, I Love Him. And we see, for one of the first times on this album, a bit of a callback to Taylor's country sound, because this very much is a blend of country and synth pop blend. And I'm just going to come right out and say this is my favorite song on the album. I think this song is an absolute masterpiece. Just because the lyrics that Taylor goes through about sort of rebelling against old traditions, old country style traditions of going to church on Sunday and, being saved because people hate you and they only save you because they want to see you be different, and how, she wants to date this bad boy and the whole town gathers together and says it's not right. And she's basically saying, oh, well, guess what? I'm pregnant. No, I'm not, but you should see your faces. It just works on every single level. I think it's one of her best songs ever.
Okay, so I swear to God, I'm not trying to break your heart and your favorite toys here, man.
Go for it.
This song kind of sucks. Like, so, I understand what she was going for here, and if focusing correctly, and if Jack Antonoff really did dial in the production elements, I feel like it really would work out really good. Even when I'm talking about production elements, in the chorus, the production kind of seems a little anemic, and the performance, in my opinion, kind of seems forced and not. It just seems like a little bit, I don't know, a little bit try hard. And I absolutely do not like the line, "Oh, I'm having his baby." No, I'm not. But you should see your faces. It kind of, for those of you who have seen The Office, it kind of reminds me of Kelly Kapoor. Like, there is a moment in there where her and Ryan from The Office are having an argument, and then she's just like, "I hope you're ready to step up because I'm pregnant." And then it cuts away to Kelly basically shaking her head saying that she's not pregnant. Like, come on, man. like, if done well, like I like how this track does do. It does have a progression, at least in a lyrical sense. Like, I'll give it that, and it's the credit where it's due. Where, like, at the end of the track, you could see, like, after every bit of drama and, like, every single, like, after they left and they came back, like, this fictional couple, like, everyone seems to accept their relationship, but, like, I don't know. I don't like their performance. The lyrics are a little bit rough. But the production, I can't get behind, man. I can't get behind it.
I kind of understand where you're coming from, and I respectfully disagree. A couple points on that. It almost feels like I feel about this song the way you did about "By a Boy Only Breaks His Favorite Toys." That we both kind of, really like the concept, and liking the concept sort of drags us into liking the rest of the song. And I don't mean to, turn this into any type of therapy session, because we're not going to do that. But I feel like a lot of, this is the beauty of music, is that based on your own experiences and your own sort of beliefs, you can connect with a song differently than someone who, may not have had those experiences. So that's all I'll say about that. But I can understand where you're coming from with the production being a little on the sort of mixed side, because again, it feels like this is a compromise between Taylor's new pop and her old country. And I understand why a lot of people don't think it works. I wasn't too bothered by it. And I think the lyrics sort of help, bring the two sides together, because, rebellious pop Taylor is trying to distance herself from old country Taylor, old rural Pennsylvania Taylor, in a sense. Again, I really think this is a great track. I understand, though, why you don't agree. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No. And I think that's the... I think that's just the beauty of, like, what we have going on with the show here, because, like, there's tracks here that I've not targeted, but, like, basically said, like, I don't like this, and you're like, hey, this is my favorite off the album. Like, it really shows, like, our, just the different stuff that we go to when it comes to music, and just how we approach stuff as a whole. So, I feel like we covered But I Love Him well enough. Do you have anything to add before we move on to Fresh Out the Slammer?
No, I think we made our cases for and against this song, so Fresh Out the Slammer it is.
Okay, so I don't know what's going on with this track here with Fresh Out the Slammer, because, like, I like how the track kicks off with, like, this Western opening, like a country opening, and how Swift starts out the song by saying, "Now, pretty baby, I'm running back home to you. Fresh out the slammer, I know who my first call will be too." And the echo of Fresh Out the Slammer, like, at the very end of that little, like, well, in that part there, like, it works out really well. But then after that, we get into, like, a verse that is disjointed, and I just don't know what's going on. I really want to know what's going on. Like, the verse I'm referencing here goes, "Another summer, taking cover, rolling thunder, he doesn't understand me, splintered back in winter, silent dinners, bitter, he was with her in dreams." Like, this might be where Swift is just writing based off of her past experiences, where she does quite a bit in her music, but it's coming off as, like, for lack of a better comparison here, man, like a Young Money rapper where she's just saying words but not connecting them with actual like proper grammar, if you know what I mean.
I know what you mean, and I'm with you. I think this song is kind of meh. But interestingly enough, I thought it was a strong song on the first listen, but on re-listen, I wasn't really following this song too much at all. Because first of all, let's just be honest with ourselves. Slammer in this case is a metaphor because please. Aside from that, one thing I noticed here, and it almost made me realize it's been going on throughout the entirety of the album, is that especially on the delivery of the verses, she is milking the phrasing from Blank Space to a T on the song. That da 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 da. It's Blank Space. It's literally just Blank Space. And I agree, the lyrics are a little off the rails because you're not sure like what she's in trouble for or what kind of trouble she's getting into. I don't really think the slowdown at the end of the song works that well. I think it's just there to be there. I think this is probably one of the weaker tracks on the album, to be perfectly honest with you, because it just kind of takes whatever momentum had been building up over the last three songs and just kind of grinds it to a halt.
I get that, and like to be honest with you, man, like whenever you mentioned the whole thing about like Blank Space, that kind of like clicked a light in my brain. I was just like, oh yeah, that's throughout this whole album, man. Like she has a very focused flow, and it all kind of like, at least on my first initial listen, I'm like, this kind of all blends together, all like it all kind of sounds like the same, and like especially with the delivery. Now I basically know why, because she was basically riding that high there. And one other thing that I'm going to mention about this track, and then we can move on to Florida, is that in the chorus, I feel like she's missing the high notes, and I hate to be so nitpicky about like, you know, like whenever vocalists are missing notes, but when I catch it and it doesn't sound correct, like it's very easy just to, like I said in the in-game Maelstrom review, just, you know, have a cup of tea, get a glass of water, come back tomorrow. You don't need to make the track here today. Like whenever that happens, it instantly really sinks the track even further and the album as a whole. Yeah, there's just plenty more examples. Like, I absolutely agree with you. The change up in the end is a complete whiplash. It's not earned at all. And yeah, overall, like, you know, like I will say this about the track though, is that the production here is doing its job pretty well. It does understand the assignment for what it needs to be going for, and it does execute it pretty well. It's just the overall, like, you know, flow of the track, the composition from the songwriting end on Taylor's end, the lyrical delivery, and the missing of the high notes that really completely sink this track for me as a whole. So, ready to move on to Florida?
Yeah, I'm ready to move on to Florida because I agree with you that, I mean, the only thing I'll disagree with you with on Fresh Out the Slammer is I agree that the production does its job. I just don't think it's that noteworthy. It's just kind of there too. Florida, on the other hand, is where we get our second of two features on the original Tortured Poets Department album, this time from Florence and the Machine, or really just Florence, not so much the Machine. And this track, it's kind of weird. I know I've heard Taylor talk about how, you know, was inspired by listening to like NBC Dateline podcast talking about how people who have committed crimes or, you know, mutilated their former lovers have sort of, you know, decided, okay, well, I'm just going to create a new life down in Florida and try to, you know, live under a new name and a new life. I don't hear that in this song. What I hear in this song is this sort of idea of, you know, just moving generally moving as a, person from the suburbs out of the doldrums that were explored on Fortnite, to this, new lifestyle in Florida. Lyrically, I think the track is okay, but the juxtaposition of everything in this song is sort of haphazard, and I'm sorry, but that chorus sucks. Where it's just Florida, and then those, like, marching snares are do, 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 do. It's like, this could have been done differently, and probably better. I'm not a fan of this. It's not great. Although, the fact that a song called Florida sucks at a time when DeSantis is governor is what they deserve, I'll move it on to you.
So, when you were talking about, like, Taylor's influences with making this song, I don't really get that at all as well. Like, the way that I walked away from this song here was essentially similar. Like, she had, like, this tortured past and she wanted to move on. I'm gonna say that this song is probably one of the best songs since My Boy Only Breaks Favorite Toys. I know. Look at me with the controversial opinions here. I like the chorus. I feel like it works well. I really love the part at the end where Taylor and Florence are, like, duetting and, like, collaborating. I feel like they mesh very well, despite what Anthony Fantano might say, where it's like oil and water, they don't mix. I feel like they mix pretty well, in my humble opinion. And, like, even Florence's verse comes off really, really well with like embracing, like, hey, screw it, I'm moving on with my life. I've had a tortured past. The lyrics include the hurricane with my name when it came. I got drunk and I dared it to wash me away. Barricaded in the bathroom with a bottle of wine. Well, me and my ghost, we had a hell of a time. Overall, like, I really, really like this track, man. It's a good time, in my opinion. I feel like this is what, like, the way I feel about this track might be like how some people might be feeling about, and like even you with But Daddy I Love Him. Like, it's a big open track, has just some excellent choruses, and overall it works out really well.
I will agree with you that I think Florence's performance on this track is pretty solid, and I think the lyrics as a whole are pretty good. Again, I just feel like it's really just the chorus for me. I cannot get past that chorus of just screaming Florida with the big drums. Like, if not for that, I think this track would just be very solid, and maybe not one of my favorites on the album, but pretty good. And maybe in a few years I'll look back and say, oh no, this was the best one on there. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, I certainly don't hate it as much as Fantano did. But I apparently don't like it as much as you do. But yeah, I can respect your opinion, because it's, even though I don't like the chorus, I will say it's very powerful. So if you dig the way it sounds, you're gonna like it. I just can't.
You just can't, Florida, man. All right. So the next track is Guilty of Sin, and I want to say this here about this track. I feel like this might be one of the most underrated tracks off the whole album, because I doubt that it's going to be a single. Watch me say that, and, like, this actually becomes the biggest single off the album. But I really dig the feelings that you can get here. Like, this is where the production from Jack Antonoff and then Taylor's delivery and the lyrics, they really mesh really well. Because at first glance, and if you don't really, like, if you just put the song in the background, you're like, oh, hey, this is like a fun little, this is a chill little pop song, but you can really feel like what Taylor was going for here, and it's like these feelings of desire, and like, oh hey, like, I really want to experience physical love with my significant other, but I've been told that I can't, and like just the struggle there. Like, I really dig this track here, and like, just one thing that I'll even just highlight here is like the chorus. how she's talking about, I keep recalling things we never did. Messy top lip kiss. How I long for our triest. Without ever touching his skin, how can I be guilty of sin? I just really dig this track. I cannot say enough good things about it.
I'm right there with you, honestly. I think this is a great track, too, and I think it is very underrated. I do like how it doesn't pull any gimmicks, because it feels like with Florida, that chorus was a bit of a gimmick. With this, it's just a very straightforward pop song from Taylor and Jack Antonoff. I think the lyrics on here, particularly when she's talking about, going from, just a kiss and writing mine on his upper thigh to some of the stuff she's talking about in the second part of the song. I say this might be her sexiest song since Wildest Dreams, which is one of my all-time favorite Taylor Swift songs. I think it's a very steamy song in that respect. And you mentioned how she was talking about, these things we may never have done. I think this plays very well with the leadoff song, Fortnite, because, in that song, she's talking about how they had this fling and now she wants to, kill the wife based off of that fling. And it almost feels like this song acknowledges that fling may not have even happened. It may just be all in Taylor Swift's mind, which I think adds a very intriguing element to not just this song, but that song as well. Just thinking, whoa, then did she make all this up? If so, bravo. But no, I really do agree with you. I think the production is very solid. I think the lyrics are very, very good. And you're right. I kind of wish this does become a single. I mean, granted, it's 2024, and the way Billboard works, it's probably going to get on the chart somehow. But yeah, no, I dig the song a lot.
Cool. So the next track is Who's Afraid of Little Old Me? And it is your turn to kick off the track here. So tell everybody, who's afraid of Little Old Me?
This song is interesting because on first listen, I cited it as a striking criticism of the music industry. And I do like the lyrics about how she's, floating through the air, moving down your street. I don't know if you've ever seen that meme of the two dudes. One's in the hallway running for his life. The other one's just floating like 2-3 feet above the ground. Like, that's the image I get, but maybe a little more professional than that. I think this song's okay, but on the second listen, I wasn't as into it. And in both cases, I think that you've mentioned how when Taylor goes in the upper range, she seems to falter. I think the screaming on this chorus is probably the worst part about this track. She just kind of reaches up there, just comes out of nowhere. I could really do without that. But aside from that, it's an alright song.
So you are absolutely right. Where this is a very interesting song, in that when I did my second listen through on here, I actually cited this as like one of my favorite songs off the album, just because the overall concept of what she was going for and just how the song was structured as a whole. Like, there's plenty of lyrical moments that I'll highlight here in a second. But then after I did my detailed note taking and watched some reviews, my opinion changed a bit, because how, I think I alluded to this earlier, where Taylor could have probably used the help of just Jack Antonoff or another songwriter, just editing down or changing some stuff up in this track here. So the moment that I'm going to highlight here is when she's going on about who's afraid of little old me? You should be. You should be. You should be. When she repeats that, it just comes off a little weak. Compared to how the rest of the track shows how she can really write a good song. The contrast at the end of some of the verses here, where she's mentioning, you don't get to tell me about sad, and then the next instance of this is, you don't get to tell me you feel bad. Like, I like that little contrast. And then, like, even lines like, I was tame, I was gentle, till the circus life made me mean. Don't worry, folks, we took out all her teeth. Like, you can really see that when she focuses in and she really, like, gets in the groove, she can write good lyrics, man. But, like, unfortunately, with the moments of, like, her echoing, you should be, and then even in the moment where she's, almost seems like she's having that inner monologue with, so tell me everything's not about me, but what if it is? Like, that moment there, it comes off a little bit try hard, which is kind of a shame because, like, overall, like, at least structurally wise, like, this song does work well, in my humble opinion. It's just some lyrical misses that happen that I take away from the track for me. And one other YouTuber that I did watch review this album, and his title for the video was "We All Need to Calm Down," was one Mike the Snare. And one thing that he highlighted that I'm gonna, well, not that he's ever gonna listen to this podcast, but if he is, welcome. But one thing he highlighted is, like, we can't take just samples of lyrics from music and take it out of context, because that's just taking a car apart and saying that the car sucks because the front bumper doesn't look good. The way that I experienced and how this track sank, in my opinion, in the next listen, I experienced it within the whole context of the song. So, like, if we're talking about this song as being a car, and, like, oh, hey, yeah, it runs well, but, like, I don't know, every 3 miles, it just beeps out this really loud horn that just distracts everyone around them. Like, I wouldn't want to drive that kind of car. I don't know if you would want to drive that kind of car, but yeah, like, I don't know why I got stuck on that metaphor. It's just, I have very complicated feelings about this song.
To follow up on that, I think you did a good job of describing how, like, a solid song can be, derailed by a bad chorus. I mean, I just said that very same thing about Florida a few minutes ago. But I also kind of want to talk about how you're talking about how this song is, a criticism of the music industry, and how, on the chorus she's talking about getting revenge and, saying, who's afraid of little old me. I think just those ideas in of itself are very conflicting, because it feels, and I'm not obviously speaking for everyone in the entertainment industry, but it feels like a lot of those who have been through the ringer, like, there was a series that came out a few weeks ago called Quiet on Set, talking about the history of Nickelodeon and how some of its main head people, like Dan Schneider, were, like, horrible people. A lot of those perspectives were given by people who were in the industry, got out, and saying, I am staying the hell out, and you can't do anything to me. I don't want to be part of this anymore. And I feel like that's what the verses on here are coming from, the perspective of someone who's just been beaten down by the music industry and just done with the typical conventions. But the chorus is someone who wants to fight that. The chorus is saying, I want to fight this and, get what I want from you. And it feels like the two sides can't coexist. It's either I'm going to take you on and take you down, or I'm not going to deal with you ever again. And I feel like both perspectives are in this song, and that's kind of why it does feel a little haphazard thematically. And I know we're probably just diving into what is otherwise a okay track on this album, but it does feel interesting, like, again, both musically and lyrically, how, if not everything's all together, you do sort of think to yourself, okay, what exactly is wrong here?
So, the next track here is I Can Fix Him. No, really, I can.
Yes, I can fix him. No, really, I can. Now, this song is another song where Taylor dives into mixing her country roots with her, sort of pop side. This is almost like her Old Town Road in a sense, because it's very like, has this sort of back Western vibe or, Old West vibe. And the song is basically a very central song about, fixing a bad boy, saying like, oh, I could change him. I can make him, a good boy for me. And granted, this is all stuff that, Bill Hicks was joking about back in 1994. Talk about how, there are women out there who could, if they really tried to, look at someone like Satan and be like, I can fix him. But I'm not going to go down that routine. Just look it up yourself. The point being, I actually like this track a little bit. It's not the most amazing song on the album, but I do think it is kind of cool in its own sense, where, she feels like, oh yeah, and then at the end of the song, she's like, oh wait, no, I can't. This almost feels like, and I don't think she would ever have considered doing this, but I would love for Beyonce, if she's going to continue with this country phase, to actually like throw this in her conscious. I could really see Beyonce doing the song just as well as Taylor did.
I have the same exact thoughts, man. Like, overall, I agree with you. This is a solid track. It's probably going to go into the bucket of, like, this is a good song. I don't see this being a single, but this is one of the cases where, like, if you dig into an album, like, you can find gems like this. I love the smoky atmosphere of this track, and you can really just picture, like, what's going on here. Like, Taylor's in this bar, and she's eyeing up this guy who is, like, a little rough around the edges, but she's just like, you know what? Yeah, I can fix him. And, yeah, overall, there's a whole lot. There's not really much to it other than that concept there. Like, because you get the production that works well. It does understand its assignment in this track here. And Taylor's, I would say this is in the top half of Taylor's performances in this album here. Like, this track here, she really sells what she should be going for, and it works out really well, man, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I really can't add too much to it other than what I've said. It's a great little solid track. It's a nice little almost break from the chaos that was the last track in a sense. And I'm only saying it's chaos because we just spent like 10 minutes talking about one track. So I'm good with I Can Fix Him, No Really I Can, and we can move on to I don't know, do you want to call this Love of My Life or LOML?
Well, we're going to go by the track listing. It is LOML, like Matt said. So I will take this track here, at least kicking it off. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, man. This is my favorite track off the album. Like, here is where we see Taylor really embracing what she's really known for, what she's really passionate about, which is digging into those feelings of love, loss, and loving. Like, it's just, I really dig the piano here. Lyrics such as, "Who's gonna stop us from waltzing back into rekindled flames? If we knew the steps anyway, we embroidered words. The memories of the time I was away stitching. We were just kids, babes." And here we just see where Taylor reminisces about feelings, about how this relationship went sideways and how everything just blew up. And just the strings that underlay everything here. It just seems like when I did the second listen through on this track here, I was just like, okay, it doesn't seem like, this is the production that we've gotten so far in this album. Like, who else was collaborating on this album, this track here with her? And that was actually Aaron Dessner from The National. So, I did notice a change of pace, and it works out really, really well. Like, the performance here that Taylor has, it's really sincere. And one moment that I'm going to highlight here is that the lines of, "Our field of dreams engulfed in fire, your arsons match your somber eyes, and I'll still see it until I die. You're the loss of my life. When I heard that last line, that hits really hard, man, and that's why I'm gonna kind of not say. I'm gonna say that this track title is. Did you say that it was Love of My Life or Loss of My Life?
Love of My Life.
I'm gonna say it's Loss of My Life.
Which I will agree with you wholeheartedly. I think you really hit the nail on the head on this one. It's not my favorite track on the album, but it's up there. First of all, my first note on this track is wait, a real instrument? Because this is a piano ballad about that lost love, and it's a very straightforward piano ballad. I don't think the wordiness that sort of brought down some of the other tracks, I think it really works here. I think the wordplay is very good, and I love the twist at the end where it's just like, oh, so that's why it's not spelled out. That's actually really clever, and I like that. I think this is a grand track. I put this in the top half of the album, and my only thing is I think, I hope that this song becomes... I don't think this song is going to get the love it is going to get. I think songs like Fortnite and a song we're going to talk about in a little bit here are probably going to be higher up on the charts than this one. But this one really deserves a lot more play. It's a very good song.
Yeah, man. And this is where I'm going to emphasize that when Taylor does focus in and she really does, drive home, what she wants to go for, or at least on the songwriting aspect, and she can really deliver a very beautiful song. This song is amazing. It's just a shame that we get moments sprinkled throughout this album where it's just a little what's kind of going on here. This is a little bit cringeworthy. The next track is I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. And I'm going to let you kick this one off, sir.
So I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, I think, is a solid lyrical follow-up to LOML, because it definitely plays off the feelings of the last song where she talks about her heart being broke. And basically this song is her saying to the fans, all that stuff you saw me do throughout 2023, breaking world records of, concert sales and, putting on the biggest show of all time. I did that and I was hurting inside the whole time. I mean, I love to do it, but I hate to do it, which is a very interesting perspective from the world's biggest artists. I just did this whole grand thing that revolutionized pop culture, and the whole time I was just in the state of not wanting to do it. Which, I don't think is completely true, but the fact that that perspective is even considered here is incredibly fascinating. And I think the song is solid too. I kind of liked it a little more on second listen than the first listen, because the first listen, I described it as an anti-chorus that's also anti-hook, because it just kind of gets to this part where it's like, I'm so depressed, I celebrate like it's my birthday every day. It just kind of floats on these handful of notes, and it doesn't really change chords or anything like that. And I get what she's going for, and again, I liked it better the second time, but it still comes off a little weird and a little strange. I also thought the outro to the song was probably one of the cattiest things she's ever done on record. That little spoken word piece, because she's basically just immersing herself with sort of this, fake smile of disdain towards everyone and everything. And again, I don't know how much of that she really feels or how much of that she, is just portraying through song. It does create for a fascinating piece of work, but again, it's a little too haphazard for me to really truly recommend.
I absolutely agree with you on the part of in the chorus where the synths are riding, but it doesn't really change anything. Whenever you were speaking about that, I'm like, yep, that's exactly how I feel. And again, I agree with you that the ending, it's not needed, man. Just change it up, edit that part out. If you want to go for being very candid, cool. but still, like, we get the message of the song. Like, there's something to be said by, like, make us, like, I don't know. We're not talking about film here, but, like, in filmmaking, there's a phrase called show, don't tell. And, like, she's done a really good job throughout this track here of saying, hey, this is what's going on. But you don't literally need to say, and hey, this is what this is all about. Like, it's not needed at all. So overall, like, my thoughts on this track here, it's another mixed bag kind of track, and this was the other song that I had listed as, like, when I initially like listened to the record head to toe. I ended up skipping it because I couldn't handle the lyrics. Cause I'm a real tough kid, I can handle my shit. I'm like, okay, like, you're trying hard, aren't you? Like, I understand, like, you might have the mentality of, like, as a woman in your 30s, that you still feel like you're a kid. I mean, heck, nowadays there's moments where I still feel like I'm a kid, but it doesn't come across very organically. It just doesn't come across in the way that she's intending it to, at least in my ears. But what I will say, though, is that there are some really good lines here. I like the line of, I'm so depressed I act like it's my birthday every day. I'm so obsessed with him, but he avoids me like the plague. Like, I like the contrast here. And another moment here is that I like in the background where you can hear the counting, because it adds to the effect of what she was trying to go for, saying, like, yeah, despite, like, how you might be feeling, like, you got to keep moving on. That's a very good production choice in my opinion. It's just, overall, this is another mixed bag song for me, dude.
I think my overall verdict of this song is it's more interesting than it is good, and it's more good than it is bad, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. So, the next track is The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. And I actually might change up my favorite song off the album, because I would say that this song is my favorite song. I kind of forgot that this song existed here for a second until we came across it. So we get another piano kind of ballad here, but you also get, like, the bits of electronic instrumentation, and, like, you get lyrics of, and I don't even want you back. I just want to know if if rusting my sparkling summer was the goal. And just a way that you can just hear, like, there's very candid moments in the track here where, like, you can hear right before Taylor gets into, like, the next verse, you can hear her breathe, and it works out really well. Overall, it's a very beautiful track here. It's another getting over a heartbreak and taking the stance of calling the heartbreaker as the smallest man. I really dig this track. I mean, it's a very beautiful track, and it's another example of, like, what Taylor can do when she really focuses in and really just wants to dial home a point without getting too gimmicky and getting lost in her own brain, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean, and I think this song is one of the better songs on this album, too. It does reinstate a whole lot of themes from earlier on in the album and plays them off very well. The choruses on this song are very good. I think this is the strongest writing she's had on the album, maybe with the exception of But Daddy, I Love Him, and this lyrically may even be a little bit stronger. The bridge is devastating to this ex-lover that she is going after. Just little details about, this guy being in a Jehovah's Witness suit, or how, it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. Stuff like that just really kind of hits home that this is basically her spinning out every single last thing she has to say bad about this guy who broke her heart. I'm pretty much right there with you. This is one of the stronger tracks on the album, and it's gotten a lot of feedback positively on social media. So I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes something of a hit in of itself.
Yeah. So the next track is The Alchemy, and we get a change up here where instead of a heartbreak, we kind of get a love song here.
Yeah, The Alchemy is definitely if the smallest man who ever lived was, the acceptance part of the 5 stages of grief, then this is the next part. This is moving on to the next part of life, the next romance. And a lot of people wisely and smartly have decoded. It really doesn't take much of a linguist to code that this is probably a love song to her current boyfriend, Travis Kelce. That being said, though, I will also point out that it's also a song stating her comeback to romance, because the last song was so rough, and a lot of this album was so rough that, you sort of had this feeling that maybe she didn't want to, be the lover anymore. She just wanted to be this sort of, hop along bohemian type of, come what may type. But this is her saying, nope, I'm going back to writing songs about love. I'm going back to being in love, and I'm going back to being at the top of my game. And I think it's a strong song in that regard. And I think it's probably going to be another huge song as well. Is it one of my favorites? Not necessarily. I don't hate this. I would probably put this in the upper half of the album, but not in the, probably not top 5. Like I think this is a very solid, strong song, but it's not like a standout song for me.
I would absolutely agree with you, man. Like, at least on my second spin of this track here, I really didn't like it because it just seemed like everything was a little bit disjointed. But upon further reflection, even taking a look at my notes that I wrote, that this song really it does do its job well. It understands what it's going for, and I kind of like that we get a nice change of pace here with actually a positive song, because a lot of the tracks off of here were basically they're very down in the dumps and very very depressed, and it almost seems like wallowing in misery, which me, like I'm a very huge fan of like emo boy music, and I can wallow in misery for days, at least music wise, but like it's a nice change of pace. Is it one of my favorite tracks off the album? No, but it's a solid track. I'll have to be on. If I had to take down Who's Afraid of Little Old Man, like upon further reflection, thinking that The Alchemy is actually a pretty decent track, I'll give Taylor her flowers with this track here. But honestly, not much else to say about it, because it falls into that, I don't know. It knows what it is and it's doing it well compared to like other tracks off the album, like a couple, like, hold on, let me take a look. Not that I really even need to mention this, but like tracks like I Can Fix Him, no, really I can. Like, not really much to it, but it's still a good time. So, the next track is Clara Bow, sorry. And we've reached the end of the Tortured Poets Department with this track here. And I kind of like I like what she was going for in terms of like how each verse is structured as, hey, you look like so and so. Like the first one's Clara Bow, and for those of you who are like, what's a Clara Bow? Well, welcome to the club, because I didn't know what a Clara Bow was either. But apparently it's an actress that was known for suffering for mental issues due to her love life that was highlighted in the media during her time. And I like that because then you can really see, like, starting out, like, you can see, like, the hints of what Taylor was about to get into. And then the next one is, like, hey, you look like Stevie Nicks. And that's with Taylor's rise to stardom, like, right before she hit transition from country over to full-time pop. I feel like that works out really well. And I have mixed feelings about how the track ends, where it's just like, you look like Taylor Swift, and like I don't know if she was trying to go for like, hey, congratulations, you made it, patting herself on the back, or maybe speaking to like that next Taylor Swift that's about to go through what she's gone through, like maybe a younger person, like I don't know, like for lack of a better comparison, because I'm not really up to the modern pop scene of like especially younger acts, like maybe like a Sabrina Carpenter type. Overall, like it's still like it's a mixed bag of a track, but I'll say I would kind of land on the side of it. I kind of like it. It's a good ending because you get the wordiness in here, but you could feel the passion in it, and it works out well. Where she's saying like, "I'm not trying to exaggerate, but I think I might die if I made it. Die if I made it." Like overall, decent way to end the album, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I tend to agree with most of what you said. I struggled myself with wondering if the last verse was more on the side of foreboding or self-congratulatory, because by saying that she is the new standard, she's acknowledging that she's made it, but at the same time, she understands that the machine is so strong that now it's just going to be a matter of these industry execs who tried to mold her into something, try to mold the next upcoming big star into something like that. I think this song does, in a better way, what, or at least in a more organized way, what Who's Afraid of Little Old Me was going after. I think it's not as haphazard or, doesn't really, it's not as interesting, but at the same time, because it doesn't take any risks, it becomes a more solid song, in that regard, in regards to, calling out the media industry for what it is, and how her next move is to, be this mold for, future players. So I think it's a solid way to end the album. I don't think it's a great finisher. And thinking about it right now, I'd almost be more comfortable with this track and The Alchemy swapping out spots on the album. But that's a small minor nitpick. I think this is a solid track. I'd probably put it more towards the middle than anything else.
Yeah, I get that. So, we did it, man.
We did it, and for the moment, we are alive. We scaled through the halls of the Tortured Poets Department, and have come out on the other side.
Yeah. This might be our longest, review of an album. Again, no. How long was the, at least track-wise of Exile in Guyville? Was it 14 or 16 tracks?
I want to say that was either 14 or 16. And I know for a fact that I think the Public Enemy episode was also 16 tracks.
Okay, so at least track-wise, we've definitely done longer albums, but I feel like we've definitely did do a deep dive into some tracks. Some of the tracks we kind of got lost in the weeds, but overall, we explored every aspect of this department that tortures poets, and it's time to give some ratings and next album recommendations. So I'm just gonna go first here because I'm the one who is talking right now. So I'm just going to make an executive decision here. So overall, this album was just a mixed bag for me. There's moments where Taylor does really, really fucking shines with her songwriting, with songs like The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, LOML in Florida. But then you get songs where it undercuts the momentum of the track with But Daddy I Love Him, Down Bad, and Fresh Out the Slammer. There's moments where you can really see where she really focuses in, and it really delivers a really great track and experience there. If you maybe cut off some of the fat off of this album, in my opinion, you get a really decent album. But unfortunately, this is the finished product that we have, and Lord knows that I'm never gonna listen to the anthology, even though I'm kind of tempted because of how I heard that apparently Aaron Dessner from The National has a lot more production elements than that. part of the experience, but I'm not gonna go into that experience willingly. That being said, though, it's just a shame that like with this album here, it's a clear evidence like she can create a really good pop album, but like she has a capability, but it just seems like she kind of, I don't know if it's an effect of her not anybody telling her no and giving her like just trying to help her out and creating an even better song, or it might be just general exhaustion of re-recording all these Taylor's versions, the Eras tour. It could be a multitude of factors, but honestly, when it came down to ratings here, I had to really look at myself and because the lowest rating I ever gave an album on this show was Babel by Mumford and Sons, and then right up next to that would be Exile in Guyville, which I gave Babel a 4, Exile in Guyville a 6, if I can remember correctly. And I had to look at myself. Did I hate this album more than Babel? And the answer is no. Because there's moments where the tracks that I mentioned, I can really dig into. I wouldn't mind going back into as a whole, and those moments outweigh the good moments that I experienced in Babel. Now, did I like this album more than Exile in Guyville? No, because the main critique that I had over in Exile in Guyville is that a lot of the tracks sounded the same, but I would be willing to go back into that album because I don't know, there's something to be said about a lot of the tracks sounding the same. It's not necessarily a huge valid critique. There's moments here where she's missing notes, weird production choices, and it just overall, honestly, I'm gonna give this album a 5 out of 10.
Okay, I can respect that. A couple notes based on your thing. First of all, I think you also gave Yeezus a 5 out of 10, if my memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, you are correct there. So actually, that's a very good comparison because there was moments there where I really dug what was going on, and there was moments where I'm like, what?
I can't say I'm really surprised by that because I do know that you had some thoughts about this album. My sort of stake of comparison for this album is the other major pop album that we've done, which is When We All Fall Asleep, Where We Go by Billie Eilish. And realistically, if I'd say that this album is maybe on par with that, because I don't think there's anything on here that's as lyrically interesting as maybe Bad Guy or the song that she sang. I can't remember the name of it, but the song where she talks about standing on the ledge of a building. That being said, I also don't think there's any songs on this album that are as bad as 8. And so I really, and I don't think I have to go really too deep in this, because the thing with this album to me, at least from my perspective, is that, Taylor Swift's coming off of, the biggest tour of her life, where she becomes an international superstar. And I think ultimately what she wanted to do with this album was get all of her thoughts and feelings out onto an album as sort of a thank you to her fans and sort of a palate cleanser for herself. So in that sense, just putting out her thoughts and feelings over top of, the most basic pop tracks, I think she successfully pulled that off. I think she definitely, did good in delivering a pop album made for her fans. But what she sacrificed in doing that was creating a mass appeal to everyone. And while it's not fair to compare her or this album to the Beatles and Sgt. Pepper, it does, there is a fair comparison because much like the Beatles, Taylor Swift is the biggest thing in the world right now, and she could have taken music in a whole nother direction if she wanted to, but she chose not to, and I respect her for that. That being said, there were some great songs on this album, I think, for me, whether it be The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, or LOML, or, in my opinion, But Daddy, I Love Him. There were some tracks that didn't work for me, like My Boy Breaks His Favorite Toys, Florida, even Fresh Out the Slammer I wasn't a fan of. But overall, I'd say this album is about as interesting, if not slightly more interesting, than When We All Fall Asleep, Where We Go. And so on that, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10.
Wow. So, like, it's interesting that I thought going into this review that you were going to be the one who was going to give it the lower rating, but lo and behold, hi, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. So, for those of you who are wondering what the average score of the Tortured Poets Department, between the two of us, it's a 6 out of 10 because I can math. Yay! So that being said, the next album recommendation that I had was an interesting one because originally I was going to go with Guts by Olivia Rodrigo because I remember having a positive experience listening to that album. However, after listening to the Anthony Fantano review of the album that we literally just covered, I went into checking out Lana Del Rey's previous album, which is Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard? And yeah, I would say, like, you know, in my opinion, that album's a wee bit stronger. Well, it is stronger. There's not really any misses, and especially where, like, you can hear, like, that whispery kind of vocals that work out so well. Lana doesn't miss any high notes as compared to, like, what Taylor does in this album here. And, like, even towards the back half of the album, you get some fun pop tracks that, you know, kind of work out well. So that would even be my official recommendation for the next album. If you did enjoy this album and you want to try out something different, would be Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard?
And my next official recommendation, based off of the Tortured Poets Department, goes back 10 years. It is also by Taylor Swift. It is her album 1989. And I think this is a solid comparison because, you know, we've had a decade where Taylor has officially, you know, been fully immersed in pop music. Not so much as she was with Red, but definitely on 1989. And if you go back and listen to that album, you'll probably hear a lot of similarities between this song, or that album and this album. You'll also hear, you know, a lot of maybe improvements or disimprovements, if you will. I think that is a good, strong comparison to make between the two, you know, sort of eras, if you will, of Taylor. And not only that, I would say that a couple of the songs, particularly Blank Space and Wildest Dreams, stand out among some of her best songs ever. So I would heavily recommend that album for anyone who liked this album.
So one final note that I want to say about, like, this album and just my experience, like, you know, revisiting Taylor Swift as a musical artist, before we put a cap on this review and essentially discuss what we're going to review next, is that I absolutely encourage, like, everybody to, like, you know, really, even if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, like, you know, check out this album, make your own opinion for yourself, because, like, from what I understand, and, like, there's a lot of people who I respect, Matt included in here, that they actually have they had really good vibes with this album, and then there's other people that I respect heavily that didn't have really good vibes, but, like, this album here, it was a little bit challenging for me to listen to at points, but it's good to kind of step out of your comfort zone and try something new, and, like, try an artist that, like, maybe if you're not a Taylor Swift fan, you might have the idea of, like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to have that in my life, because there are moments here where, like, you know, she really does deliver good songs, and, like, even in moments in this review, me and Matt disagreed on like, a lot of tracks, but overall, like, I absolutely encourage everyone to check this album out.
It's a nice standard setter for, you know, what your tastes are and, you know, how you fare well in dinner party conversation if you're in a room with a bunch of strangers.
So Are you ready for the next review, Matthew?
I am. It is your turn. What do you got cooking for us?
All right, so I ultimately feel like I need a palate cleanser with the next review that we're gonna do because, like, it was a little rough for me to go through the Totured Poets Department. So that being said, we have two options here for you to choose from, and one is gonna be a little bit of a palate cleanser for us both, maybe, and the other one is definitely gonna be a palate cleanser for me, but not necessarily you. Then that one would be a little bit of a challenge. So we have two bands here. In the one band we have a man and a wife along with other members, and in the other band we have brothers. What band do you want to explore?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go with the man, the wife.
Okay, so this is going to be a palate cleanser for us both. So for our next review here, we are going to be talking some Spanish love songs. And we are going to be specifically talking about the album Brave Faces Everyone, released in 2020. So if you're listening to this part of the podcast and you've never listened to anything from Spanish love songs, please check out that album on your listening platform of choice before you listen to our next review. But yeah, it's official. Our next review is going to be Brave Faces Everyone by Spanish Love Songs. I hope you're ready, Matthew.
I am ready. I am ready.
All right, cool. So that being said, if you've reached this point in the podcast here and you really you liked what you heard, which is kind of evident because I feel like at this point we're kind of almost bleeding on like maybe close to 2 hours of content here, and
I think you're right.
Yeah, we've given this album a mixed review. The best way that you can support me and Matt here is that on your podcasting platform of choice, give us a subscribe, follow, and leave a positive rating on that platform. If you listen to us on the YouTubes, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, drop an emoji in the comment section of how you felt about this review and this album as a whole. If you want to follow us further, we have social medias. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads. The tagline is TT Hey Listen. If you want to drop us an episode recommendation, the email that we have set up is ttheylisten@gmail.com. But for the last time in this episode, I am Ryan Kearns.
I am Matt Durzik, and you should see your faces right now.